I didn't know claustrophobia. Didn't get darkness. Until I was trapped in the underbelly of a doomed ship. With no windows, no light, no access. It feels like there's no air. Like being sealed in a submarine deep below the surface. The kind of hopeless situation where you can shut off your flashlight and hide, hoping none of the contagious lunatics happen to stumble across you in the pitch, hoping for a chance to escape. But where? With no windows or doors, and the elevator out of power, and the only way out is to make it through a maze of corridors in complete blackness, hoping to find a stairwell, the same stairwell everyone else is trying to reach. When you're alone in the dark, hearing the screams, that escape route might as well be a world away. See, I had no idea the horror that lurked below when I rushed downstairs to the lower decks to search for Lily. Screams resounded from all directions. Crew, rushing around and frantic, didn't even pay attention to me as I dashed through the corridors calling for Lily and swinging my flashlight. To them, the lights were still on. Presumably running on auxiliary power since the elevators and engines were out. But to me, seeing the ship as it would look 6 days in the future, dead bodies littered the floor and crimson splashed the walls. But judging by the shrieks, the present wasn't that far from catching up. An alarm was sounding. For fire or crew muster or some other emergency. Everywhere was chaos, as staff tried to contain those who, like the goateed crewman and the woman in the red dress, had gone mad. The contagion seemed to be spreading exponentially. My shoes slipped on something slick, and I flicked my flashlight downward. Amidst the old, dried blood from my vision was also a patch of fresh, glistening red. Panic shot through me, and in my sticky, bloodied hands, the beam jittered. In this pandemonium, how was I ever going to find... You? A hand snatched me out of the dark. Cold. You, what's going on? Lily burst, wild-eyed. Oh, thank God. I gasped, relieved she'd found me. It's some sort of contagion, madness. It got my bunkmate. Lily spoke with wild, bloodshot eyes. I woke up and she was peeling off her nails. At first, I thought they were press-ons, but her fingers were all bloody. Her hands shook. There was no trace of her glittering makeup or carefree persona. Her voice squeaked with panic. I shut her in the bathroom. I closed the door and she went back to whatever she was doing to herself. If you hadn't warned me. At that moment, the overhead lights flickered on. I winced under the sudden brightness of the fluorescent lighting, snatched in a deep breath as the putrid stench and the corpses along the corridor vanished. The walls returned to white. Passenger X was somewhere nearby, drawing my vision into the present moment. My eyes swept the hallway, across the people rushing here and there down at the far end. Then I turned, and Lily and I saw him at the same moment, standing just behind us. Missing an eye, which now dangled out of his head. Apparently, he'd been in some tussles with the security staff. I slid off my backpack. A few streaks of red on the walls, I noted, stayed there even with the lights on. It was real now. I pulled out a bottle.
Passengers remain in your cabin for security reasons.
The intercom blared. It had been going for a while now.
Wait further instructions.
And then, a flurry of voices. An argument. Abruptly, a new voice announced.
All passengers report to your muster stations. This is not a drill. Prepare for immediate evacuation. All passengers.
Suddenly, the intercom cut out. The ship plunged into total darkness. Screams, shrieks from near and far, including a gasp from Lily. Her cold fingers clutched my arm. It wasn't just me who couldn't see anymore. The auxiliary power, which had been maintaining the electric lights in the PA system after the engine fire, had been cut. The present had finally caught up to my visions. The Sea Star was in total blackout.
Lower decks.
Shrieks resounded throughout the ship's underbelly, mingled with sobs and shouts and, more disturbingly, laughter. The sudden complete darkness was suffocating, smothering, absolute. And though it had always been dark for me, to have it be dark in reality for everyone was a different experience. Panic suffused the air. A primal, choking fear that rang out with every cry and penetrated to my marrow. I could almost feel the blackness like a weight crawling along my flesh. And I could smell the sweat and fear. This was true darkness. My flashlight skidded across the bloodied walls, searching for Passenger X, but in the sudden pitch, he'd vanished. I caught only the scattered movement of crew and staff throughout the distant corridor. Crew members' flashlights winked on, and someone shouted, "Lock it, lock it. Don't let them out."
What do we do?
Lily's voice skimmed the edge of hysteria. At least, I hoped it was hysteria. Her bunkmate was infected. Oh, Lord. What if this is how it all goes down? Lily goes mad and I have to kill her? No. Hope is the thing with feathers. We've got to get upstairs, I said, clutching at straws. Evacuate.
Light!
Shrilled a voice. A woman in crew uniform bolted at us, cackling hysterically. She seized the flashlight before I could react. For a few seconds, I struggled with her and nearly had the light free when the woman sank her teeth into my hand. I screamed. Thick, muscled arms wrapped around her out of the dark as I yanked the flashlight back. One of the security staff hauled her away, barking into his radio.
Got another one.
To Lily and I, he shouted, Go! Evacuate! The main stairwell was behind him, but clamorous figures shouted from that direction. We retreated toward the bow. I glanced over my shoulder, briefly swinging the light back. Another crewman hustled over to the security guard's aid. Or so I thought, until he lunged, pressing his mouth to the other man's ear. Licking? Whispering something? As the two men fought, the woman broke free and rushed after us. Run! Run! I shoved Lily. We ran. Our footsteps pounded along the concrete, the flashlight's beam bouncing up and down as the cackling woman chased us.
Forward stairwell.
Panted Lily. No! I seized her arm, yanking her into one of the intersecting corridors off the main highway and through the nearest door, shutting off my light and clapping a hand to her mouth. In pitch darkness, we huddled against the door. Just outside, cackles of the woman who had been chasing us receded somewhere into the distance. Slowly, I removed my hand from Lily's mouth, leaned my lips to her ear, and whispered, "The forward stairwell is a death trap. Crowds fleeing above and below will trample each other." A flash of crushed bodies in my brain, the overwhelming smell. God. We'd have been dead if we went that way. Shrieks and pounding footsteps reverberated in the distance. The chaos was spreading. Judging by the clamor, a whole mass of people were fleeing towards the forward stairs. We both stiffened again as the cackling woman passed by outside the door. We'd have to escape either via the aft stairs at the opposite end of the ship, so far from here they may as well have been on Mars, or the central stairs. The central stairwell was the widest, harboring very few corpses according to my explorations. But to reach it, we'd have to head to the highway. And the chaos along that thoroughfare, where infection continued its spread. No. I flicked on the flashlight. Where are we? Hope flared. The infirmary. We were at the rear of the medical area, near a restroom and lab room. Down the hallway lay the examination rooms. The front entrance of the infirmary lobby led right to the elevator bay and central stairs. All we had to do was get through here.
I should have listened to you.
Lily's choking sob shattered the silence.
Oh God, I shouldn't have taken this gig.
Shh. Hey. She slid down the door, palms pressed against her eyes, and I squeezed her shoulder. Stop that. I didn't stay on board this doomed ship to leave you here in the dark. Get up.
Why did you stay?
She sniffled, palms still pressed to her face.
You knew this would happen.
For you, nitwit. And the rest of the passengers. To try to stop all this. I shrugged awkwardly. Obviously failed. My predictions always come true, unfortunately.
How do I die?
Dunno. Old age? I never saw your corpse. Liar. You touched her hand. You know she dies. But that wasn't exactly motivating. I squeezed her shoulder again. The infirmary was quiet, but from what I could remember, not entirely safe. I leaned down and whispered, "Now, I'm going to get us out of here. But there is at least one infected in here.
How?
Began Lily, but bit off her question, accepting my statement. I considered the flashlight. There were at least 2 people who would die here. The nurse who treated me in the examination room, and the secretary at the front desk. Given the state of the nurse's body, jammed under the table, she was murdered by someone else. But the secretary... I shuddered at the memory of her toothless face. And I may have missed decaying bodies hidden in closets or behind closed doors. I navigated this area mostly in the dark the first time I was here. The light will have to be off, or it'll draw attention. I think I can get us through without bumping into anything.
In the pitch black?
Just follow.
What if we run into one of them?
Shh. I know where all the corpses are. I switched off the light. The hysterical edge to her breathing ratcheted up. When I took her hand, her grip on mine was cold. So cold. Like pulling a corpse straight out of a grave. I edged along the hall, feeling the wall for the door frames. Exam room 1. Exam room 2. At the 3rd room, I stopped. A faint whimper sounded from beyond the doorframe. Weeping? The voice of a frightened woman. A dilemma raged within me. A battle between self-preservation and altruism. Finally, careful to keep myself between Lily and whoever was inside, I faced the exam room and flicked on the flashlight. Hunched under the table was the nurse who'd rendered my exam. She'd lost her hijab, was clutching a dead phone and a napkin, sobbing and terrified, and, much to her misfortune, sane. I held out a hand and whispered, "We're going to the lifeboats. Come on." She shook her head and recoiled. I moved in, tried to get closer, but she whimpered,
Go away. Go away. You're not exactly a comforting figure.
Lily whispered in my ear. Was this any time for sass? Ignoring her, I said, "It's all right. We'll help. Take my hand." I jumped at the sudden, loud sob that emitted from her and snapped my light off, backing into Lily and fumbling for my knife. For some seconds, we huddled together in the darkness, holding our breaths. But the only sound was the nurse's weeping. Slowly, the tension bled out of me. How I wanted to save her. That poor girl. But I didn't dare risk making any more noise. We still had to cross the lobby, and I didn't know where we'd encounter the secretary. If the coast is clear, we'll come back again, I told myself, taking Lily's frozen hand again. But of course, the coast would not be clear. The flashlight's beam into the room had been brief, but enough to show me under the table, next to the huddled nurse, her decomposing corpse. She would die there. The guilt was a hand squeezing my heart, crushing it into a stone as we rounded the corner of the hallway. leaving the quiet sobbing behind us. A faint illumination shone in the lobby waiting room. A flashlight. Its beam moving irregularly. A strange sort of giggle, or maybe sob, drifted to the air. Lily's fingers tightened on mine. I steadied the knife in my hand and led us closer to the waiting area. That dancing and irregular light casting the chairs into rollicking shapes. It wasn't a bright light, but we'd still have to be careful to keep out of its range. And now that we were almost into the lobby waiting area, I could hear the secretary more clearly. Something clinked into the trash can. A tooth. My heart raced like a hummingbird's wings. Hope is the thing with feathers. If I can save even one life. I squeezed Lily's cold fingers and then laid a hand on her shoulder and pressed. Stay. Hoping she understood, I disengaged myself from her. When the flashlight moved away from the edge of the darkness where we stood, I stepped out and lunged at the secretary's desk. An unholy screech pierced the air. She shot to her feet. My knife plunged into her eye, right through to her brain. I snatched up the tiny emergency flashlight she'd been using while she pried her teeth out. I caught the glimpse of her bloodied jaw and pliers on the desk. I jerked the knife out from her, the eyeball still attached. Whirled, swinging the light, at the ready, but no other assaults came. I'd been correct in my assumptions. There were only 2 deaths here. Aiming the light at Lily, I said, "Quick," and hustled us back to examination room 3. The nurse again shied back from us, but this time Lily took the lead. And, after a few minutes of speaking quietly to the nurse in a hushed voice, managed to draw her with us. Even one life. Maybe we had only delayed her fate, and she'd end up back here under the table. Maybe. But hell if I was going to make it easy for fate to have its way. From the main entrance of the infirmary, we made it out to the stairwell at last, and back up to the passenger decks, where a dim, foggy light greeted us from the windows.